Hello, I'm Stephen Mitchell, and today we are going to do a review of Rita Mulcahy. If I pronounced that correctly, we're going to call it Rita M. We're going to do a review of her PMP exam book. If you've Googled this or you looked at it or you spent any time around PMP, I'm sure you've at least heard the name or you've heard this book being referenced. When I was doing my PMP prep, at the time I was looking for an additional reference book, I had a specific niche that I needed filled. And I went to this book because it was so highly referenced. However, I did not know if it filled the exact niche that I needed at that moment. It was highly recommended, but I was looking for something specific. So my intention in this video is to let everybody know what's in the book so you can make an informed decision if you think it helps you or just so you know. So jumping in, first I need to give a disclaimer. I'm in no way related to Rita M or the publishing company or anything like that, so I don't benefit from additional sales of this book or otherwise. Just trying to give some information. So one of the biggest things you'll notice about the book when you start reading it is that it is very conversational in nature. And that's what a lot of people like about the book. It's a very easy read. Unlike the PMBOK, which I'm sure you'll find, like some people just call it a snooze fest, but the PMBOK gives you information in its rawest form. Here it is. Pretty much any other reference material that you find will explain in some way, shape, or form what the PMBOK is based on. But Rita's book is it's just like she's sitting literally in the room talking to you, or it's just like me talking to you right now. That's how this book is worded, which makes it easy to understand for almost anyone. So you can see it's pretty thick. It's more than about 600 or so pages. However, if I sat down with the PMBOK and explained everything to you, it would look something like a book that's this thick. So don't be scared by any means about how thick it is. It's a very easy read. Second is what makes this book unique is it's different for everyone who reads it. And what I mean by that is this. My understanding of the PMBOK is based on my personal experience in real life. Your understanding of the PMBOK is based on your personal experience. This book reads different to me than it does to you because the intent of this book is to identify the gaps in my understanding versus the PMBOK and identify the gaps between your understanding and the PMBOK. So 10 different people can read this book 10 different ways because they have 10 different understandings. And this is going to highlight that and tell you where the gaps are and then focus you in on how to close that gap. So it's very easy not only to go through, but to identify what your differences are and exactly what you need to focus and highlight those things. So how does it do it? Let's go through the chapters. Just like most reference material, chapter 4 is going to be integration, followed by scope and schedule and all that. That's pretty much done because that's how the PMBOK is set up. So that's kind of standard. The two additional chapters that you'll find in this book are mainly chapters 1 and chapters 15. In chapter 1, they have what they call PMP-isms. And what is a PMP-ism? That is the reference you need, the background you need to understand how the test questions are formatted. So you see in some of my videos, you have 4 examples. One you can pretty much easily eliminate. The other one, with a little bit of thought, you can eliminate. You're pretty much left with 2 answers. You're shuffling back and forth against which one is correct. The PMP-isms give you the background that you need to know. Assume this, assume that. So you may look at this question and that question, that answer and that answer and say, well, if the situation's like that, that may be the correct answer. Situations like this may be the correct answer. This gives you, chapter 1, the framework under which the questions in the test are being asked. So you say, well, I know, or I can safely assume this. That makes me be able to analyze these two answers I have left better. It's just the general framework that you should go in assuming. It does help. And last is chapter 15, and that gives the name of the chapter is Tips for Passing the Test for the First Time. It should really be called Tips for Passing the Test, because it doesn't matter which time you're taking it, they are very helpful tips. What I mean by that is little tricks of the trade that definitely help you. In my part 2 of my 3-part series, we talked about the impact and just ways you can do things that will help you wither down those 4 options to one clear option. These tips, they're very much worth it. If not that chapter alone, I think it's very, very helpful. So one thing you'll find that's in this book, because it's very conversational in nature, is called Rita's process chart. What is that? You know, page 25 of the PMBOK is this knowledge area and process group map. Rita's process chart, I'll just kind of flash it for you, it's this entire page. It's long. It is very long. This is 47 processes. This chart is, I think it's close to 90 or above. But before you get scared, here's what it is. Because she explains everything to you, she wants you to understand how the process works. And what do I mean by that? This is 47 processes, but each of them has an input, tool and technique, and an output. So if I were to write all that out, I'd have way more than 47. Rita tries to get you to understand the logical sequence behind doing the project. So in initiation process group, you have mainly the project charter. But the input of the project charter is the identifying stakeholders and identifying the project manager and making sure you have the business case. Well, that's how it's laid out here. Instead of saying, here's one thing, you have all these things that go in and out of it, what should you do first? You should do your inputs first. Then you should do whatever process you're in. Then you get an output of this. So that's why in initiating group on page 25 of the PMBOK, there's only 2 processes. And here they're set up, process 1, project manager, process 2, da 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 da. So hopefully you get the logical sequence, and inherently you're learning the inputs, the tools and techniques and outputs. So the next one is planning. And so as we start off each chapter, we always go back, or she always goes back to Rita's process chart. So at the beginning of chapter 4, here we go again. We see the process chart and it highlights, I'm not sure if you can see that well, but it just highlights which steps are in chapter 4. So in the integration, out of that 90-something step process, we're using steps this, and this, and that. And so hopefully you can see it all and put it together. And then when we get to scope management, we have the same Rita chart, and it tells you you have this, and this steps, and these steps to do in scope management. Now, the good thing about it is if you don't want to learn it that way, you don't have to. You don't need to go through Rita's chart if page 25 in the PMBOK is the way you would like to learn it. Because once again, most of your data dump, most of your brain dump on the test is page 25, is rewriting that chart. This helps you get a better understanding of the steps. However, if you don't want to look at Rita's process chart, you don't need to use that to understand the other parts of the book. So that's a good thing. Use which one you want. The next is in each chapter. One thing, this does not have a full-length test at the end. A lot of people tout the fact that once you finish reading the book, we've got a full-length exam for you at the end. At least this book specifically did not have a full-length test at the end, but it does have chapter tests. So when you finish the integration chapter, you will have a test there and at the end of each chapter. Now, 3 things. One, it has what I'm going to call mini quizzes, and it has exercises. The quizzes test your knowledge of what you just read. So it helps your retention. So it even though it doesn't have a full-length test at the end of the book, It maximizes your effort on the chapter test by quizzing you on the information beforehand, so you can go back and say, yeah, I didn't really have a full understanding of that. Let me go back and read through it again. Therefore, when I get to the chapter test at the end, I've kind of honed in on my strengths and weaknesses to make the best effort of that chapter test. The next thing it does in the exercises is this is where it bridges that gap, identifies the gap, and it bridges it. So it may ask you questions like, in this process, what do you think will happen? And these are questions that don't have discrete answers, meaning you're going to write out an explanation of what you think should happen, and you're going to read the explanation, the answer of the explanation. The quizzes are going to test you on specific answers. These exercises are going to see where your knowledge is. So you say, well, I believe in this process, this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And then you read the answer, you say, wow, I was kind of off. I didn't think it until that. Or you could say, I really truly thought of 3 things when in reality it was 5 things. This is where I say the book identifies your gap from the PMBOK and then starts to bridge that gap. So you say, wow, I was here. Now I know these other things, and this is what I need to focus on to bring myself closer to what the PMBOK and the test is actually trying to get me to do. Third, the chapter tests are they have a lot of explanation, which is great. A lot of material that you may come across in your prep, they're short questions, and you'll realize the test has really wordy, lengthy questions. Sometimes they just look like a paragraph. So one thing is that the questions are very good. The quality of the questions is good. Number 2, the quality of the answers is also good, meaning they give you the reason why this was the correct or incorrect answer. So if I get a question wrong in my practice, a lot of mini tests will just say, this is correct because it came from page 316 in the PMBOK, item 3.5.6. Well, the PMBOK, once again, is the rawest form. So if that reference to that page doesn't help me, then what do I do now? I just know that I got the question wrong, and I may have to take it at face value that that's the correct answer. Some tests will even take a specific sentence in the PMBOK and make a question out of it. Meaning the PMBOK is however many hundreds of pages. If you were to read that thing from cover to cover, you would get the general idea, but you wouldn't necessarily remember one sentence. And a lot of tests do that. They take one sentence, take it out of context, and you say, well, I can't argue with it because it's in the PMBOK, it's right there. But it's not really an exemplary question of what you're going to have on the test. This test, not only the questions are good, they'll explain why the answer is wrong. So instead of simply saying, this is the correct answer because, it may also explain to you why the answer you came up with is incorrect. It's incorrect because of this. It's incorrect because of that. What it will also do in its explanation of the answers is rephrase what the question was asking. If you looked at part 2 in our 3-part series, half the battle sometimes is understanding what is the question that's being asked. It's not that clear cut. You have to understand how to do that. Rita's book explains to you, you probably got that question wrong because you misinterpreted the question itself. What this question was actually asking was this. And that allows you to go back and not necessarily focus on the answers and which one is correct or incorrect. It allows you to retrain your brain to think that's how the test is going to ask these types of questions. So I think they do a very good job. It's a very comprehensive book. It's worthwhile to me. I mean, you have to make your own decision, but hopefully this lets you know what's in the book, that you can make your own informed decision if you want to use it or not. So hope this helps. And once again, good luck on your test prep.